Hi, I'm Jim Gerrish. I'm from Patterson, Idaho. I work as an independent consultant, workshop speaker, work with public land and private land ranchers, grazers all across the country. And I'm here in North Dakota today at this tour on the small ranch. And we'll be talking about basic grazing management things, when our pasture's ready to begin grazing, how do you know, what level of use we should be making on a pasture, the recovery time required to keep diverse, healthy plant communities out there. And then later on today, we'll be doing some indoor sessions, and I really haven't decided what I'm going to talk about yet because I have to see how the day goes here. I'm flexible and fluid, the way every grazing manager should be. Well, Burke and Greg said a lot of fine and interesting things, and I knew they would because they're wise fellas. And I knew they would say a lot of the things that I would normally say in a place like this. And so I'm going to just talk about something completely different. I'm going to talk about time. I'm a very time-oriented person. I think about a lot of things in the context of, well, how much time will that take? How much time do I have? I think as we advance in years, we start realizing that time is the most valuable thing that we have. And we have a limited amount of time to do everything that we want to do in. So we're going to think about time in several different contexts. And time is happening, right? Isn't, as we're sitting here, time moving past us? Time is not a human construct. It is a reality of the world. But we have these delineations of time. We talk about seconds, minutes, hours, days, weeks, months, years, centuries, millennia. I want to think about stuff that happens in seconds. The duration of a bull ride. You got to make that 8 seconds. It's the reaction time of the third baseman to a line drive coming off the bat these days at 108 miles per hour, 110 miles per hour. You have a fraction of a second to react. Most electric fence energizers, low impedance energizers, pulse at a rate of 1 per second. 60 pulses in a minute. Those are all things of time. Your first kiss was probably measured in seconds, not in minutes. And then the time required to create a wreck. We could think about this in driving. You're distracted for a couple of seconds, and bam, you're dead. Or someone you love is dead, or someone you don't even know is dead. We can also think of it in the context of leaving a gate open. Oh, I'm just going in there for a bit. It'd take me 5 seconds to get out of the truck and close that gate. I'm going to leave it open. You end up being in there a little longer than you thought. Suddenly, there's 56 cows out on the road, and we could have a wreck again, or it simply kind of wrecks your day because they're trotting off down the highway, and you're going to have to get them back in. So those are some of the things that happen in seconds. We advance to minutes. God, how many more minutes till I can clock out? Because I hate my job. We watch the clock, and we watch those minutes slowly move by. In this day and age, it's the basis of your cell phone contract, though it's changing from that. It's the time that you have the opportunity to save someone's life. 3 minutes, high school wrestling period. When you have a kid who's a wrestler, and if things aren't going good for him in that particular period, you're looking at that clock. Can he make another minute? Greg said it takes him 5 minutes to move his electric fence. Well, it does depend on what the length is. On the longest runs of fence that I move on a daily basis are just over 1,000 feet. So to take down a fence, pull the post, leapfrog it up for tomorrow's move, takes me about 27 minutes now. I used to do it in 23 minutes. I don't move as fast as I used to. But the time to move electric fences, to do daily rotations, to do multiple moves per day, it's minutes. You don't have to, it's not increments of hours, it's minutes. A minute, the time required to have that wreck. Or many minutes as the cows trot down the road. Then we have hours. It's time in a day, 24 hours. Working day, 8 hours. God forbid that we should have to ever do anything more than 8 hours. Well, in Europe, it's shorter than that, but we have people who work 4 10s, and they work 10 hours a day. And Greg talked about someone who works 14 hours a day, 7 days a week. So we often think about the time we work within a day in the context of hours. It's how long we wait to see the doctor. Hours. It's the amount of time in a year that some ranchers spend on financial planning or marketing. Just a few hours. I thought it was interesting, Greg says that he tries to put an hour to an hour and a half into marketing every day. Always trying to do something, making the contacts. And that might be 3 hours on some days and no minutes on some other days. And it's the time required to fix a wreck created in a few seconds. Not the kind of wreck where we've actually killed someone, but we have to go out and it takes us 5 hours to round up those cows that went out the gate because we went into the pasture for a few minutes and we tried to save a few seconds by not closing the gate. Then we have days. God, how many days till school's out? Or if you're the mom, it's how many days till school starts again? How many days does it take for a grass plant to grow a new leaf? I said recovery time is, well, how long does it take you to grow 4 leaves? In the spring Missouri environment or the irrigated Idaho environment, a cool season grass plant will put out a new leaf every 5 to 7 days. So 4 leaves becomes 20 to 28 day recovery period. In the drier part of the summer, it's going to take a couple weeks. And so now 4 leaves times 2 weeks is 8 weeks of recovery. In the high desert, sagebrush steppe environment of Idaho, it's going to take a month. The growing season might be 100 days. If you're lucky, more often it's 60 days. And that's why you can't graze every pasture every year, because sometimes they don't grow 4 leaves in a year, especially if it doesn't rain. How many of these do we spend working cattle every year? I have heard Burke say several times so far today that he likes the infrastructure development that allows you to increase carrying capacity on the same land because you don't have to add another tractor, another truck, more people, except on those days when you're branding, processing for shipping, doing things like that. The days that you actually work cattle are the only days that you need that additional labor. You know, if you ask the state extension cow-calf specialist in most U.S. states how many cows should one FTE, full-time employee, and on your slide where you had to put man instead of person, FTE fits in there, and you've covered yourself to not be a sexist. Okay, so you ask the state extension specialist, how many cows should one FTE be responsible for? And most of them these days will say 400 to 500. I look at the most successful ranches in the American West, and most of those outfits are talking 800 to 1,000 cows per FTE now. The Australian national standard is 1,500 cows per FTE, and the really good stations, ranches, in Australia, 3,000 cows per FTE is what they expect. Wow. The only time you need those additional people is on those working days. And in our part of the world now, there's always day labor cowboys that you can hire. And ranches trade back and forth on doing the work. But just because you've added 200 cows doesn't mean you have to add another full-time employee. So think about time in that way, that extra help that you need. It's usually measured in days in the year, not months or the whole year. How many days do we devote to learning something new every year? I think that's very important for all of us, is to continue to learn. And I think one of the very best things that grass farmers can do to further their education is take a trip far away from your environment. Go to someplace completely different and see how people do things in a completely different environment. When we left Missouri, I was running a cow unit on about 2.05 acres year-round. I went to Idaho and I learned how to graze under center pivots, how to graze in flood irrigated, how to graze desert rangeland getting 8 inches of precipitation a year. I am confident that I could go back to Missouri now and I could, on our same farm, I could run a cow to no more than 1.5 acres. I'm not sure what I could actually get it down to, but because I went to a different environment and learned the magic of water from irrigation, as well as the magic of water in the desert, I thought I was doing a good job of managing the water cycle in Missouri. I wasted so much water, not near as much as my neighbors did, but I wasted so much water and so much opportunity because I didn't fully understand the power of water and the need for managing the water cycle effectively. I went somewhere else and learned that. We just, earlier this week, we had a couple from South Australia come and see us for a couple of days, and that's what they're out doing. Seeing something different in the world and learning new ideas. So take some days to go somewhere and see something completely different, because you will come away with some different ideas that are very applicable to your location. And it takes days to sort out the bigger wreck. Weeks. How many weeks vacation do you get at that job of yours with the government? Yeah, you can ask that question. How many weeks is the ground actually covered with snow or ice that would keep you from grazing? You know, a lot of people tell me, oh, it's 5 months. We've got snow cover for 5 months. Well, when was the last time you actually had snow cover for 5 months? It doesn't happen every year. And cows, is the snow cover this deep or is it this deep? That makes a difference. So a lot of us say, well, that won't work here because we're covered up in snow all the time. Well, probably you aren't. How many weeks of the year does Jim travel? Sometimes I hate to count them up. Uh-oh. Black screened it. Ooh. And it's weeks to recover from the wreck. Months. 9 of them to have a baby. 9.5 if you're a cow. It's a long time to go without rain. months. When you start counting the dry spell in terms of months rather than weeks, it's a little different thing to contend with, and you got to have a plan. If there is any likelihood that it's possible that you're going to have a couple months without rain, you've got to have a drought plan in place that when you see certain indicators that, oh, it's turning into a dry period, if you don't have X amount of rain by June 1st, you have something that you're going to do. You know, sell some cull cows. Make a plan to get rid of the yearlings that you're grazing earlier. Do something. The key thing about a drought plan is not only having it, but implementing it when the time comes. How frequently we pay the bills. Cash flow is the lifeblood of any small business, and all of us in the farming and ranching business need to have cash flow. Getting one paycheck a year when you sell the calf crop and having to live on that is really tough to do. The add-on enterprises that Greg talked about, the lambs, the pork, the chicken, the furniture, and I didn't even know you were making furniture. That one was a new one for me. Add those enterprises so you get more paychecks during the year to help cash flow out. I think that's very important to success. Oh, and months, the time interval before we create the same wreck again. Some of us are slow learners, and you have to have it happen a few times. Then we get into years. You've worked here for how long? Man, my age, your age, we all measured in years. Except little kids, you know, when you have babies, they're measured in months. And when you have someone who's that tall, oh, she must be 3.5. She isn't 3, she isn't 4, she's 3.5. So little people, we put those half-year increments in them. But when you get as old as what some of you guys are, yeah, it's just straight up years. It takes years to bring the soil back to life. It's not going to happen overnight. If it's your objective to regenerate the soil, you need to be thinking about years' commitment. The wetter the environment, the faster it happens. The drier the environment, the more slowly it's going to happen. And you have to have patience, and you have to have a plan for regenerating the soil on the farm. That's in the context of years. You know, a lot of farmers, they say, yeah, I got 40 years experience in this job. Well, if it's 40 years of doing the same thing that doesn't really work, what is the value of having 40 years of experience? Wouldn't you rather have 40 years of different experiences? Wouldn't that keep you younger and life more exciting? And that's one of the things about grazing, you know, not following this recipe of doing, well, you till it on this day, you put in this many seeds, you spray it with that. Grazing is so much fun because it's always changing, it's dynamic. And you can have 40 years of different experiences. How long it takes to learn not to create that same wreck. Centuries. How long might your kingdom last? How long have Europeans been degrading soils in America? Almost since the day we arrived. First we did it on a small scale, then we did it on a larger scale, and then we did it on the industrial scale. But we have now been degrading soils in America for centuries. I have been places in Europe and Asia where they have been destroying soils for thousands of years. Almost every society or civilization that existed in the past where the archaeologists go and explore, almost all of those civilizations collapse due to soil degradation, resource depletion. You would think that we could begin to learn our lessons and not do it. The U.S. Constitution has now endured over 2 centuries, and it's how long we collectively remember the wreck. Except we don't. This is where I'm supposed to say about degraded civilizations. We don't exactly get it. Oh, and how long does it take to distort almost every fact? Centuries. though we're getting more rapid progress these days for distorting facts. Millennia. The time it took to build the prairie soils. We are not going to recreate the prairie soils in just a few years. We can bring a soil back to life, but it took thousands of years to develop the prairies, that prairie ecosystem, as to what it was. Don't expect to get that back in your lifetime. I don't know that it can ever actually be recreated, because all the events, the climatic events, the geologic processes, the animals that once lived in the prairie that are extinct now, those aren't out there to create that prairie. It's a nice dream, but it's not the reality. It's not what you should expect. We're going to have something different from what the prairie was. Since the end of the last ice age, which had a lot to do with building soils. How long since cows started grazing grass? It wasn't, just in not 1969, that cows started grazing grass. They've been doing it for thousands of years. And then how long it takes for the wreck to become a myth. And then we do it again. All right, today, tomorrow, yesterday. Here's things we say about today. I'll do that today. Oh, I don't have time to do that today. Today is the first day of the rest of your life. I want to believe that. I want to think that every day I can change and become a better person, do these things that I always said that I would do, but there's too much of this. I don't have time to do that today. It's about priorities, isn't it? I'll do that tomorrow. There'll always be tomorrow. But what if tomorrow never does come? What if there is no tomorrow? Well, then it won't matter whether you did anything or not, will it? Yesterday, damn, I should have done that yesterday. I hope some of you know what the next line is going to be. Yesterday, all my troubles seem so far away. Now I long for yesterday. Damn, I got that blank screen again. Working versus time off. Working time, 40-hour work week. If you're in the farming or ranching business, it probably tends to be a little longer than 40 hours. We don't get overtime pay. We don't get comp time. And we don't get hazardous duty pay. There is a time commitment if you're going to be in this business. Bert talked about setting the goals and the shared vision. Maybe part of that shared vision should be, how do we get the time that it takes to run this farm or ranch into a 40-hour work week? Does it mean more people? Does it mean working smarter? Does it mean changing the type of business that we're in? Time off. My time don't belong to the man. 3-day weekends, isn't that a wonderful concept? Family time is important to a lot of people. I thought it was great, the parental and child interaction we saw out at the small ranch today. Those kids were involved. Hopefully they'll stay involved and have that interest, that enthusiasm 10 years, 20 years, 30 years from now. One of these days I'm going to my happy place. Weekdays versus weekends. Now this is definitely a cultural construct. We named the days of the week. We have 7 of them. Why is it 7? Phases of the moon, of course. Well, it could be 14 or something, but we have this thing we call a week. Biological systems do not respect the weekend. It is a 7-day commitment. Now, we can do things so that we can have that system running on its own, so we don't have to be there on every day. But you got to plan for it. You got to build it into the program. If you want to have a weekend, you have to have cows that fully understand that they do work 7 days. They don't get time off. Order versus chaos. I can't remember why I put that one in here. Is it to keep our life more orderly by having that day of rest on the 7th day? That was to put some order into our life, to break the chaos. I don't know. And why are Mondays such a pain? Why isn't it Thursday? That's the pain. I don't know. Because if you don't really have days off, because the biological system doesn't stop, and you work 24/7, Monday's just another day. Growing season versus dormant season. There's a time that plants grow and a time that plants do not grow, right? Almost anywhere in the country, in the world, there's no such thing as a uniform 365-day growing season. One of my brothers lives on the big island of Hawaii. They have a couple of grass farms there. They get the one by Hilo. They get 120 inches of rain a year there. But they have 6-week dry spells where not a drop of rain falls. So nowhere does it always grow every day. Livestock and wildlife, however, do need to eat every day. And because grass does not grow every day of the year, and wildlife and livestock have to eat every day of the year, it is obvious, it is inescapable that the grazing season and the growing season are not the same thing. Grazing season potentially is 365 days of the year. Growing season can be anything from as short as 45 to 60, all the way out to, I'm going to say, 300. Dormant season grazing is a fact. And just to put it in perspective, if humanity vanished from the world tomorrow or tonight, what would our livestock do? Most of them would survive. The ones locked up in buildings and feedlot pens might not, but the ones that are out there, they're going to survive. They'll do without us because it's what they did before us. Yeah, there it says there. Just emphasize, year-round grazing is not going to just happen. You have to plan for it. And your winter grazing program starts when the first blade of grass appears in the spring. You've got to be managing and planning from that first new blade of grass for what you're going to do in the winter. Cool season versus warm season, pretty obvious. Oh yeah, there's a time to wear shorts and there's a time not to wear shorts. For a lot of rednecky kind of cowboys, there's no time to wear shorts. And that does constrain your view of the world and how it works. So someday, in the privacy of your own home, just cut loose and wear shorts and see what it's about. If nobody's around, go outside and experience it. Because there's a time to do it and a time not to do it. You do it in the warm season, don't do it in the cool season. So we have different plants that grow at different times of the year. And we can use that in our planning of our feed supply. Important thing to remember, though, there's not a day that it changes from being cool season to warm season. There's a transition period. Some years that transition period is quite short. Sometimes it's quite a bit longer. And that's why we need to have flexibility in management, is to make that adjustment. And if you're familiar with the Pirates of the Caribbean movies, and they talk about the pirate code, and somebody calls for parley, but they'll still whack your head off or something. It's more conceptual. Warm season and cool season are conceptual. Okay. Oh, and if we have warm season species, cool season species, winter annual species, summer annual species, we should try to incorporate all of those into our grazing resources because it broadens our window of opportunity for grazing. The use period versus the recovery period. Use period, plants are being exposed to grazing. When that happens, photosynthetic capacity is being reduced. Root growth is being diminished because we have less energy flow going to the root system, and the nutritive profile of what's available in the pasture changes every day. That changes what the animal's going to select for. It changes what their intake level is. So time is a very important, duration of time is a very important component of the use period. Recovery, plants are not being exposed to defoliation, and I have domestic defoliation because we still have wildlife out there eating it. And so the photosynthetic opportunity is expanding through the recovery period, not only above ground, but also in the root system. So we expand the root system during the recovery period. And also a lot of other things are happening with the insects, the fungi in the soil. All of those things are expanding during the recovery period, and they tend to contract in the use period. And then from the cow standpoint, gestation, lactation, maintenance. All of these have different energy requirements. If we can match the availability of forage energy, forage productivity to when the animals have their highest demand stage, we have a system that's going to function better. Remember that every bite of grass, every bite of harvested forage too, everything has a cost to it. And we can figure out what the cost is. You know, I think both Burke and Greg talked about a day of grazing almost always cheaper than a day of fed hay. So, and then, yeah, the more iron and oil involved, the more the bite will cost. With so many different connected through time, management really revolves around time, understanding biological time, yada, yada, yada. All those things are in there. Last thing that I want to hit here is using time effectively. And so I got this, I don't even remember which one of the time management gurus did this one, but here we are today. If you don't make decisions, you have kind of a default future. You're just going to be kind of on the same old path here, and you might find yourself 20 years from now in the same place where you are today, and you might not like that. When you make your own decisions and choices, you can create that future. And if you create your future to allow more time for yourself, you get the opportunity to do a lot more things. For some people, they do it for themselves. For some people, they do it for mentoring, education, hobbies, family time, free time. Some people object to this next slide that I'm going to show, but to me, it's very important. It's the 10 most powerful two-letter words in the English language. If it is to be, it is up to me. All right. Let that one soak in. And I'm done talking. I'm going to put a poem up. I'll let you read that. I'm not going to read it, and we'll get set up for doing the Q&A. I wrote this for my wife oh, what a bunch of crap. It's not, no, it doesn't fit on the screen. I didn't mean the poem was a bunch of crap. I think you might be able to figure out what the first words are on there. But thank you.